although he was acquitted in the criminal case. The civil lawsuit filed after that and then decided after that. The jury in that case found that he was responsible. He was liable for the wrongful death of Nicole Brown Simpson, may she rest in peace, and also Ronald Goldman. And that is very important. And the big difference between the criminal case and the civil case is not only the fact that the burden of proof in a criminal case is beyond a reasonable doubt and less proof is required in a civil case, preponderance of the evidence or clear and convincing evidence, both of which are less than beyond a reasonable doubt. But in addition, Simpson did not testify in the criminal case. He chose to remain silent. So he was never cross-examined, and he had a right to remain silent. But after he was acquitted in the civil case, he was required to testify, and he did testify, and he sat there and he lied through his teeth. And I say that because he was testifying next to a large photo of Nicole Brown Simpson, who had a big black eye that he had inflicted on her. He had beaten her 5 years before he killed her, and she ran out of the house with her black eye that he had given her, and she was hiding in the bushes, and she was terrified. He then was charged with spousal battery. He pled no contest to spousal battery. In other words, he admitted it. But the judge in that case 5 years before he killed her didn't give him 1 day in jail, not 1 minute in jail for beating his wife, the mother of his young children. So that emboldened him, that empowered him, and he went on to do the ultimate act of violence, which is killing her, leaving her almost decapitated right on the doorstep of her condominium. Those 2 young children, Sydney and Justin, could have walked out any moment looking for mommy and found her on the doorstep in her pool of blood. That would have been trauma plus trauma, and stayed with them the rest of their lives to see their mommy like that. Thank God they didn't open the door, but that's OJ Simpson. He didn't care about anybody but OJ Simpson. And so all I can say is, no, I don't mourn his death. I do feel sorry for his children, Sydney and Justin, who are now adults. And my heart goes out to the Nicole Brown Simpson family, to their aunts, to Denise, to Dominique, to Tanya, who always worked so hard to remind everyone that there's so many battered women out there who are victims of gender violence and who are not yet winning justice. And so, especially where there is the power of celebrity, of a rich, famous, powerful man, often a well-known man is believed by a jury over the words of his victim or even the body of his victim, because they've never met the victim, barely know her in some cases, but they felt that they have a celebrity in their living room and he would never do such a thing. All I can tell you is the system still fails. 30 years later, it still fails battered women in many ways. I've been, representing victims for 48 years. We are the leading women's rights law firm in the nation. And there is still a long, long way to go. But I can say, now that OJ Simpson is dead, I do hope that his victims, Nicole and Ron, will finally be able to rest in peace.
Yeah, so Ms. Allred, you say the system failed Nicole Brown and that it continues to fail women. And that's what I was going to ask you next. I mean, how did this case affect your attitude towards the criminal justice system in America?
Well, I think we need to educate the public and still look what happened. There was a mountain of evidence in the criminal case. His blood was all over the crime scene. The DNA in his blood matched the defendant's blood, namely OJ Simpson's blood. Much more evidence than in the typical homicide case. And yet the defense ran a narrative that somehow this was about trying to get an African-American powerful celebrity man who was successful in bringing him down. Nothing could have been farther from the truth. This was a gender violence case. It kind of happens every day in many places throughout this nation, and I'm sure in Australia as well. But they didn't want it to be that. They wanted to put the police on trial. They wanted to put the prosecution on trial, and that was a distraction. And they ran this civil rights theme, which distracted from the violence against women theme, which became like a footnote instead of what really happened. So I think the good news is that over the last 30 years, Me Too movement, we have become, as women, much more empowered. Women are not going to be silent anymore against the injustice that is being done to them. They are going to demand justice. Now we have more women judges. We have more women prosecutors. And we have more women willing to break the silence about the harm that is done to them. They are living in dangerous times, and they're refusing to take it anymore. The fact that a lot of men can't control women, and that's what they want to do, is making them angry. These men need to grow up. They need to become adults. They need to take responsibility for what they do and be accountable. And the system has to do more to support the victims over those who do nothing but hurt them and endanger them.
Is it also about centering the stories of the victims? I mean, OJ Simpson's name has become a household name over the decades. We know it with such familiarity. Nicole Brown's name, not so much. I mean, is this about sort of centering the voices of the people who are affected by these things rather than the perpetrators?
Well, that's true. But you know what? Karma sometimes goes around and then bites somebody. And that's what happened with OJ Simpson, you know. He just thought he could do anything. He was above the law. He was able to escape prison by being acquitted. And then he, in Las Vegas, went in and, became the perpetrator of an armed robbery and kidnapping. And, he had issues with guns. He tried to say, well, I was just getting my own stuff. I wasn't stealing anything from anybody. There were legal ways he could have done it. Instead, he went with a gun to a hotel where that was located. And those items were no longer his. And he just took them. And you can't do that. There are legal ways to recover what you believe was your property, should be your property, and it's not with a gun. He ended up spending 9 years in prison. So he dies a convicted felon as well. And then you're just showing him going into a room to try to get probation from the 9 years, from the sentence. He lied there. He lied to people there. I called him out on it at that time. And he kept getting away with his lies, so why wouldn't he continue it? Unless there are consequences that are teaching moments for these men who lie and who abuse their power, who abuse their position of trust in their family. And unless they have to pay serious consequences, they're not going to learn any other way. And so, we have to not just talk the talk, we have to walk the walk. And there has to be true justice for victims. And that's the only way that men like OJ Simpson are ever going to change. His obituary is always going to be starting out with the fact that he was found to have killed 2 innocent human beings. And that's the way it is. But we can never erase the truth. We must always remember the victims. We can talk all day long about OJ Simpson, but we must always give honor and remember the victims.